Welcome to Lunch and Learn Live. It is Tuesday, March 24th. I hope everybody is staying safe, hunkered down wherever you're at. I know there's some people still in offices all across the country. I'm actually coming to you live from my basement, just like we were last week. I am very excited to welcome on our guest, Joe Hawley. Can you hear me?
I can. How are you doing? Thanks for having me.
I'm good. Yeah. Where are you at today?
I'm in Austin, Texas. Just moved
Okay.
into a new house that I'm housewarming over the last week or so because we've been stuck inside, which has been really nice actually.
Yeah. I kind of figured you weren't out driving around right now, but
I got the van ready in case I need to bug out.
there you go.
Don't
I'm
you
sure
worry.
you're probably going to get a little bit of cabin fever considering what you've been doing the last year and a half or so.
Yeah, it's been really nice actually. I haven't been in one place for the last couple of years, and just buying this house has been really grounding. And the virus that's happening now is kind of forcing everybody to slow down, and it's been a pretty amazing gift for me personally to have the time and space to really slow down and kind of think and bring what I want to bring to the world without like having busy time of traveling and all these things I've been doing.
Yep.
So it's really
Yeah,
given me space to really create, which has been awesome.
I've heard that from a lot of people. I did a podcast with a small business owner the other day he owns a restaurant. This is really hard for him, but he said it's almost been a blessing for me to stop and take time to kind of think about where we're at and those types of things. So, well, I kind of want to get into this, and I know I told you that, the premise of the show being a little bit of your background, and, I love your story, having listened to your podcast with Nick Hardwick, and just hearing the things that you guys talked about. I was really fascinated by that. So I kind of want to go back in time, though, back all the way, really. You grew up in Anaheim, California, correct?
Yes, yeah, Orange County, Yorba Linda. It's like right outside of Anaheim, a little smaller city, but
Okay.
yeah,
And
moved there
was
when I
that
was
where you
third
were the
grade.
whole time when you were younger?
I moved there when I was in third grade, middle of the year, and lived there all through high school until I
Okay.
went to university.
Got it. And when you were in high school, I saw that you had played football for years. Did you play any other sports?
I always played a lot of sports growing up. I wanted to play football when I was younger, but I was too heavy. Like in the Pop Warner system in California, you had to be less than a certain amount of pounds, and I didn't want
Yep.
to lose weight to have to play. So I played like soccer, played baseball a little bit, was terrible. Any sport with hand-eye coordination was not my thing, and I didn't start football until high school, and I fell in love with it. And I just knew that was the sport I've been waiting for. I
Okay.
also did track and field. I threw a shot put in discus, but that was kind of because my strength coach was the one involved doing that, and it was like the extra way for him to get us in the weight room and get us bigger and stronger. But yeah, it
Yep.
was awesome.
You hear a lot about that, about kids playing two sports simply for the strength conditioning.
Yeah,
So that
yeah,
doesn't
no
surprise
doubt.
me.
Yeah.
And then when I noticed that you were a three-star rivals recruit. So I would assume that you went on some pretty significant recruiting trips. How did you end up at UNLV?
Yeah, so I got actually a lot of attention. I got quite a few scholarship offers from some bigger schools, but none of them really recruited me heavily. I was like kind of in between where I wasn't like a big time recruit, but I was big enough to get the scholarship offer, but not big enough to like really recruit me heavy. So a lot of these bigger schools would give me scholarship offers, but nobody was calling me and like telling me, what they had to offer, like what stands out about their school. They weren't really actively recruiting me. And a
Yep.
lot of the bigger schools wanted me to commit right away, which I wasn't ready to make a decision. So they would pull their offers as people would commit. And UNLV, man, like I loved the lure of being able to compete right away and play right away. I didn't want to sit on the sidelines for a couple of years. So I know going to a smaller school, I can contribute right away, which I ended up playing my true freshman year, and played my first college game at 17, which is pretty wild.
Wow.
And and it ended up, and the O-line coach really recruited me hard, like called me once a week. He came to my house a few times. He recruited my parents as well. And it's funny. You got to be a really good recruiter to get your kid to come to Las Vegas to go to
Yeah.
school. And so they knew that they had to recruit the parents heavy, and they did so with my parents, and it just ended up working out. And, although we weren't very good at football while I was there, it was a great opportunity. I learned a lot. And, even if you go to a small school, if you're good enough, then you can still make it to the pros.
Yeah. When you were there, were you playing center then? And did you play that in high school? Was it just a position you've played all the way through?
No, I played tackle in high school and defense. I actually got a couple scholarships as DN too, which is
No kidding.
Pretty proud of that. Yeah. And then I moved to college. And UNLV, another part of the thing, they wanted me to get there because they were a smaller school. They were like, we'll let you play whatever position you want. And then as soon as I got there, they're like, you're playing offensive line. It's like, okay. So then I started playing. I actually ended up playing 15 games at center and 16 games at right guard. So that was actually a pretty good draw when I was going into the NFL before I got drafted. Was I had this diversity and a lot of experience at both positions, and I could play both, and that was really attractive to a lot of NFL teams.
Very cool. Was there anything that stood out to you? Did you have that? Well, two questions. You talked about the offensive line coach. Was that your same coach all the way through college?
Yes.
Okay. That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. I usually
I came in with this whole coaching staff. I think it was my freshman year was their second or third year. And then my senior year, the whole coaching staff ended up getting fired. So we kind of all moved on together. And so they got fired actually a week before the last game. So and it was my senior year, and it was their last game. So we all kind of just went into this last week, and it was just a lot of fun. It was all saying goodbyes and not really a lot of high stress because everybody had already lost their job. It was pretty fascinating.
Was there anything that coach had sort of taught you that you carried on to the NFL or kind of lessons that you felt like were important from him?
Yeah, a lot of lessons that guy taught me. He still is a father figure. He's taught me a lot. Really good role model, just how to show up and work hard and never feel like you've arrived. As soon as you feel like you've arrived and you know it all, then that's when you're going to fail. And always show up learning more and trying to be better every day than you were yesterday. And be coachable. Don't make the same mistake twice. There's nothing wrong with making a mistake, but if you make the same mistake over and over again, you're either terrible at paying attention, you don't really care that much, or you just don't get it. Yeah, those three things, you're not gonna. And I've transferred that over into real life. I'm a fast learner. I try and fail as fast as I can because then I can learn the lesson and then move on and grow and just continue to not make the same mistakes twice and just be coachable.
I always tell people the title of my book is going to be Life the Hard Way, just because that's usually how I learn things.
Yeah, I love it.
So was there anything that stood out to you during your college career, your a favorite game that you really remember from a memory perspective?
Yeah, probably the biggest game of my career was we went down to Arizona State my junior year, and they were ranked, I think, 11th or 12th or 13th. In the country, and they were playing Georgia the following week after us, and Georgia was ranked third in the nation, and Georgia was coming to their stadium, so they all their fans had bring on Georgia, we're ready for Georgia, and we end up going in there scoring this amazing touchdown where our receiver had this one-handed grab. It was probably the only play that was ever on SportsCenter top 10 from UNLV football my whole career, at least when I was there. And it was the fourth best play that week. And he caught this one-handed grab in the back to tie it up. We went to overtime, ended up scoring a field goal, and we ended up blocking their field goal with no time for them to tie it. We blocked the field goal to win the game.
Wow.
It was this huge upset, and everybody rushed, and it was amazing. A lot of fun.
And that was on their field?
Yeah, that was away. Wow. And I only won probably 3 away games my whole career.
Wow.
That was one of them.
That's a great game. So as you finish up your senior year, you talked about, the coach being fired. Did you immediately go to one of those sort of camps that they talk about out in California or whatever to get ready for the draft?
I ended up hiring a local gym in Vegas, the Philippi Sports Institute, PSI.
Okay.
And Mark Philippi was actually a World's Strongest Man competitor. And he actually was the coach before I got to UNLV. He was the strength coach there. he had gotten let go and started his own gym. So I actually hired him and stayed in Vegas for the few months training for the combine.
Okay. And did you know, I mean, obviously, if you got an invite to the combine, you know that you're probably going to get drafted. Through your college career, was there a time that sort of the light came on and you're like, hey, this is something I can turn into an actual career?
I think it's everybody's dream. Everybody,
Sure.
they'd be lying to you if they said they didn't want to play in the NFL. And it's kind of wild how there is a lot of people that think they're going to make it that don't really even have a shot. I mean, especially playing at UNLV, we had guys that were going into our senior year who weren't even starters. And then the pro day was coming and they were like training for the pro day like they were going to get drafted, right? And it's like there's a little bit of a disconnect there. And I was always very realistic. I was like, I go to UNLV, it's a small school. I really have this dream of playing in the NFL, but I know it's going to take a lot to get there, and I don't know if I'm going to have the same opportunities as someone from like a bigger university. And so I didn't think I always kind of had this dream of going to the combine, like that was going to be a big next step to like making my dream come true. And when I got that letter, like it was a bit of a surprise. I always had this like deep knowing that I wanted to go, but I was really excited. I did not know at any moment like that was a for sure thing. Like I
Right.
got that invite letter and it was like this really amazing opportunity. I was like, okay, I can go showcase who I am, what I'm about, my skills. And I was projected to be maybe a 7th round pick, college free agent, going into the whole process. And because I got invited to the combine, I played well at an all-star game. I was like moving up the draft boards. I ended up getting drafted in the 4th round, and I
Wow.
was almost drafted in the 3rd round by the Broncos. That's where I thought I was going to go in the 3rd round, but they ended up passing on me for another guy. But yeah, so it was like really the whole process was like really proving myself and getting an opportunity, and the combine was a big piece of that.
Was there anything that stood out to you at the combine for you? Like you went there and you're like, man, I really crushed that. Like, what was that experience for you overall?
It's really exhausting. I mean, it's the biggest job interview there is. I mean, I am like not having any experience with job interviews or anything. It goes very quickly from a game to a business. And you get invited to the combine and it's all, you sit in the room, you have these, first of all, they're doing all these like Wonderlic tests, these intelligence tests, these IQ tests. Then they had to do the physical stuff that you've been training for months. So there's like a lot of like kind of pressure on that. There's all the people you watch on TV, like all the coaches, all the GMs that you see like on the news, like are all there, like asking you questions. And you go sit in an interview room, like they have different teams if they want to like talk to you one-on-one. You walk into this little hotel room and there's literally the GM, the head coach, the position, all the position coaches, the scouts, like 15
Wow.
people sitting there, and there's just a chair, and you go and you sit down, and you're just like the energy that you're just taking on is just really overwhelming, and they do
Right.
it on purpose to see how you handle it, right? Like
Yep.
how much you can handle, and it's a lot, and it's really quick, it happens really fast, and you have to perform and stay on the whole time, and it's exhausting for sure, but I learned a lot about it.
Very cool. So you mentioned that you thought you were going to Denver. Were there other teams that, as you started to have discussions or private workouts, those types of things, where you thought you were going to go? Was Atlanta even on the board at that point?
Yeah, funny story. Atlanta was not. I had no idea that I was going to go there. They're even interested. I think with a player in my position, where I was kind of moving up draft boards, I was like under the radar, and so they knew there was a lot of value, and they could get me later in the draft. So part of their kind of scheme is to not make it a big hype, because if it becomes like a player becomes hyped, then the media can start talking about him, and then they can move up the draft boards pretty quickly. So some teams, if they like you, they won't even show interest. They'll just kind of like do it from the periffs.
Right.
And so Atlanta was definitely did their due diligence on me, but they never really showed interest in me. There was only a few teams. I mean, like Philly was really interested. Chicago Bears were, and I know like the coach, the O-line coach from the Broncos, like loved me, and he actually it was pretty cool. He called me after the 3rd round, after they drafted another center with that slot, and he was like, "Hey, we're rebuilding our offensive line. We know you can play both positions, like all the inside positions. We're gonna end up taking you with our next pick, so be ready." And I was like, "Okay, cool." And he like loved me, and so then the Falcons ended up coming in and drafting me like a few picks before that. And it's wild just knowing that that one decision, like where I got drafted, like really just changed the whole trajectory of my life. And it's just it's crazy to think about what would have happened if I would have gone to a different team or a different situation.
Right. Those little tiny things, just little moments in life that completely steer you in another direction. It's always pretty crazy. And to think
all the little decisions.
I know. Every day. Yep. So you got drafted to Atlanta. At that point, the quarterback's name just completely blanked on me. Matt Ryan.
Yep.
Yeah. And that would have been the quarterback for you when you went there, correct?
Yes, he was in his third year.
Okay. And were you playing center at this point?
Yeah, so I had a really up and down time in Atlanta. I played there for 5 years, and my first year I was the backup. I didn't play. There was a 14-year vet there who I'm very grateful for him because I learned a lot from him, and they actually drafted me to replace him. But he ended up like playing a couple years, and I was the backup. I didn't get my first playing time until my second year because he was hurt going into the season. So I played the first 3 games, and he ended up coming back from injury, and then I was back on the bench, and it was a really frustrating time for me because like my whole thing is, even when I went to UNLV, I don't like being on the sidelines. I want to contribute, and in any other position in the NFL, like you're contributing on special teams, you're a backup, you're rotating in because there's only so many roster spots. But offensive line, if you're one of the 2 backups on offensive line, you're like just kind of just there waiting for someone to get hurt.
Right.
And so that was really, really hard lesson for me to like take a step back and be patient with that and like still show up and work. And finally ended up getting an opportunity to play guard because our right guard wasn't really performing and he was a little hurt. So they ended up giving me a chance to play some guard. So I played the rest of the season, the next 9 games at right guard, but I was out of position. So then going into the following year, the starting center was set to retire. And so I was thinking, okay, this is going to be my opportunity. I'm going to move over from right guard to starting center, and I'm going to have my own 14-year career. Matt Ryan's a young quarterback. I'm going to be his center, and we're going to have this Peyton Manning kind of a Jeff Saturday like duo going. And yeah, just all these things I created in my mind. And then they ended up, I had an off game during the playoffs. We played the Giants in the first round. That was the year in 2011. They ended up going and winning the Super Bowl. We lost to them in the first round. I didn't really play that well. Excuse me. And they ended up with our first pick that year in that year's draft. They ended up drafting the best center in the draft out of the University of Wisconsin. And I was just like, holy crap, like that happened fast. And then not only that, they ended up signing back the guy that was supposed to retire to another 1-year deal. Wow. So I went from thinking I was going to be the starter and have this illustrious 14-year career of my own to barely making the team the following year, not even seeing the field. I kind of went into this depression and really kind of woe is me victim mentality where I felt like I wasn't getting a fair shot and like nobody really wanted me there. Ended up getting cut 2 weeks before the playoffs. It was when we were 13-3 and we were about to be the number 1 seed in the playoffs. Ended up getting cut. I ended up having a conversation with the GM and the head coach. They ended up keeping me for some odd reason because of the conversation we had, and ended up playing that year. And like that whole kind of situation where I really realized, it kind of woke me up to the fact that I was about to be on the streets and nobody else would have missed a beat. They would have just continued to move on, and I would be the one filled with regret because I knew I didn't give more to accomplish my dream, and I would have like squandered my whole dream. So that whole situation really like lit a fire in my ass to like really not do it for anybody else but myself, and really work hard and do everything I can to achieve that dream and make that dream a reality. And so that like turning point in my career ended up going in the following year and competing with that draft pick. And I honestly thought I outplayed him. I had a really good training camp. I spent the whole off season like really training and focused, and everybody was like telling me how much better I was showing up and how much my body was changing and how stronger I was. And they ended up giving him the job again still. And I was like, damn. And so end up going halfway through the year, they end up benching him because he wasn't playing that well. I finally had my opportunity to play. And then that following year I was a free agent. They ended up signing me back my 5th year. And that was the first year after 5 years in Atlanta where I finally won the starting job. So I was the opening day starter. It was like, I'm about to start my career here. I just got a new contract. I'm feeling good. And the 4th game of that season, I ended up blowing my knee out. And totally like shattered right MCL, ACL, the whole thing. So I ended up losing out on that whole year, and I Ended up getting cut the following year because my knee wasn't right, and then I ended up going to Tampa for 3 years, which ended up being a huge blessing because,
Right.
like that career I just told you about in Atlanta was very up and down. I worked my way up and become a starter, and then something would happen where I would like lose it, and then I had to work my way back up and lose it. And then finally going to Tampa and having a fresh start was a beautiful gift because it was a lot younger team when I went there. It was Jameis Winston's rookie year, Mike Evans' second year. They had a couple rookie offensive linemen, just a really core young team. And so I came in as this veteran, ended up starting there for 3 years, and it was just completely changed my whole dynamic of my career. And it gave me like this resurgence of like really feeling a part of a team and a core part of the team and a leader of a team. And so I was just really grateful for that opportunity to kind of start fresh.
Yeah. I think you talked a lot about this with Nick on his podcast, and looking back on that first time you were cut in Atlanta, like you had to do some soul searching to say, did I do everything I could do to be the starting person? And you decided that you hadn't. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah. I realized it took me up to the point of losing it all. Potentially, it was all taken from me. And in that instant, I was like filled with regret. And like I wouldn't be filled with regret if I knew I had given it all. And I knew at that point, I knew that I wasn't going to play football forever. I knew that there was going to come a time when I'm going to be looking for new opportunities, doing something else, either get cut, decide to walk away, however it was going to turn out. But I knew at that moment, like I did not want to feel like I had more to give. Like I wanted to be like, I gave it everything I had that I know, and I'm the only person that knows that. Nobody else knew that. Nobody else thought I had more to give. Like they automatically assume that you're going to give it your all, right? And so it's just this internal battle. And I decided at that moment, like I'm going to give everything I have, and it's going to come to a point where it's not going to be good enough one day, but that's fine because I'm going to be able to live with myself and be happy with what I gave.
I love it. Very cool. So the 3 years in Tampa, I know that you had signed sort of a 1-year deal on the tail end, and didn't I think that you didn't take, or they didn't take the second year on a 2-year deal, and that's when you decided to retire. Is that accurate?
Yeah, they ended up not renewing my contract on the second year. I had already made the decision before then to really not play, and I could have played and tried to go to a different team, but I was really ready at that point. I knew after my 7th year that I was pretty close to being done. So that whole 8th year, it was really in the front of my mind, like that was going to be my last year playing, just because my body was so beat up. And I was ready to move on.
So 3 more quick football questions and we'll move on. I read an article, and I think it was from Dirk Cutter, talking about sort of your mentality on the field, sort of irritating some of the defensive guys. What was your mentality on the field? Like who were you out on that field different than who you are in life?
Oh man, I've changed a lot. Really competitive. I'm a really good teammate, and I really showed up as like a leader for the other guys, and I loved playing for other guys, and that's why I loved football so much, because it was such a team sport, and you had to rely on the other guys, and you're only as good as the weakest person on your team, especially offensive line. So picking guys up, and the way I played, I'm an undersized lineman. I'm not the biggest, not the strongest. I'm probably one of the quicker ones, and probably one of the smarter ones. Those are the 2 things that I really brought to the table. But the way I played is really what kept me around so long. It's what got me into the NFL in the first place. I played until the whistle blew every time, and I just never took a play off. I would go as hard as I could, as fast as I could, as strong as I could, and just get up and keep doing it. And I think, that was something that really, as a leader of a team, really helped, showing guys with your actions on how hard you're going to play and how much you're going to push yourself inspires others without even having to tell them. And I always tried to lead by example through that. And really, really trying to use that and the way I played and the toughness I played with it to my advantage, and trying to get under other guys' skin and stuff. And, just show them that I'm kind of a dog out there, like I have this really aggressive attitude. And that's definitely totally opposite of how I live my life now and how I navigate the real world. I've really I've grown a lot. I think I had a little bit of like a toxic competitiveness. When I was a kid, I was the kid that would lose a video game and throw the controller across the room and get really upset.
Yep.
And I've learned that I put a lot of my self-worth and a lot of my value in performing and achieving and being successful on the field. And I think that was part of the reason it was so tough when I decided to walk away, realizing that, who am I without this game? Like, what kind of value do I bring to the world? Like, I am not worth anything because I don't have this thing anymore, and having to go on this journey to really find out who I am and know that I am worthy of anything I want in this life just by being. And it's been an amazing journey.
Very cool. I know that even when I talked to Nick sort of about the anxiety that football can cause, he even talked about throwing up before games. And I think I saw an article that mentions you having ulcers, which Nick had as well. Did that, was that part of the reasoning, like, I need to get away from this game because it's making me sick?
Totally. Yeah, it was, it's a lot harder than people realize. I mean, physically, yeah, it's really hard. But on top of that, like the performance anxiety, you're constantly being judged and expected to perform at the highest level. And if you don't, they'll replace you like in a second.
Yep.
Like I got cut in Atlanta. It was my third year. We were 12-2 or something at the time, and it was Christmas Eve. It was 2 weeks before the playoffs were starting. They were going to cut me because they found someone better to replace. It's just like that's always hanging over your shoulders.
Yep.
And that's why the guaranteed money is so important. But all the guys you hear about on ESPN and the NFL Network. Sorry, my screen just froze.
That's okay.
The screensaver. All the guys getting paid big money and all this guaranteed money. I mean, that's only the top 5 or 6 guys on each team that are getting that kind of money. Most guys are so replaceable, and they do get replaced throughout the year. And witnessing that constantly, it just always reminds you, like, damn, I got to show up and perform. And if I don't, and that's why if you have a bad practice, you go home and you like start worrying, or a bad game, or you give up a sack, you're like, damn, like am I going to be here? Like, you're always thinking about that. It's tough.
That's scary. So fun question, last football question. And I asked Nick the same thing. You're coming up to the line, you're getting ready to snap the ball. What player in the NFL during your career were you like, oh crap, it's this guy again, that you just knew was going to bring it every time, that was tough to stop and just mean as hell? Like, who was that guy for you?
Yeah, I think as an offensive lineman, the biggest like kind of test of that is, what guy do you lose sleep over the night before you're about to play him?
Who was that for you?
You're trying to prepare. It was Aaron Donald for sure.
Really?
And yeah, we played the Rams a few times when I was in Tampa, and they had this nickel package where they would run like a 3-down lineman with all these DBs, and they would like kind of walk around and do different blitz packages, and they would line up Aaron Donald over the center. And when we broke, 3rd and 10, we break the huddle and you turn around and it's Aaron Donald standing right there, and I just know it's like me versus you. It's like, all right, like this is it. Buckle up. Like, this could get ugly, or I could lock this guy down. And I was really proud of myself. I played really well against him my whole career, but he was definitely a guy I lost sleep over.
Have you seen the video of him prepping pregame where he's walking around talking to himself? Have you ever seen that before?
I have not.
It's pretty. Yeah, it's pretty amazing. You can watch it now. It's fine.
Yeah, I might have nightmares. I don't know.
Yeah. At what point were you in Tampa when you're starting to decide in your head, like, my time is coming to retire in the next couple of years, and what's my plan? Like, when did you hatch this plan to get rid of your belongings, revamp a van and rescue a dog and tour the country? Like, when does this start happening in your head?
That was like after I had already retired.
Okay.
Trying to figure out what I wanted to do. But the actual retirement, I think you ask any football player during the middle of a season if they're going to play the following year, and I think the majority of them will really question, like, I don't know if I want to do this again, because they're going to be in so much pain and so much like physical, like the anxiety and the stress, and they're gonna really question it. And I feel like every year it was like, and obviously when I was younger, it was like I wanted to make enough money to get to that point. But then as soon as I did, it was like always in the back of my mind, like, do I want to do this again another year? Do I want to do this again another year? And like, every year it started getting more and more like prevalent. Like, I don't know if I can do this. And then after my 7th year, I went into my 8th year, which was my final year, in another competition with another guy, a younger guy, and I ended up losing the job. And it was the first time in my career I was on the sidelines again as a backup, but I wasn't even dressing. I was one of the guys that was inactive for most of the season. And I remember like being totally content with that. I was just like, I lost that competitive edge. And I realized at that moment, like, I can't show up and be the best I can be for this team and for my teammates if I'm really like satisfied not even contributing. And it just was such a profound shift in like my wanting and desire to like go out there and compete and play the game of football. And I just realized, there's so much more opportunity out there and so many other experiences, so many other life experiences that I want to experience. And I'm ready to go check them out and try different things and learn and grow. And, this has been an amazing life experience, but it's time to move on.
Yeah. So you retire, you're in Tampa, you're living down there. Once you retire, walk me through that process. I mean, you're trying to find yourself. I would assume you were dealing with just a little bit of mental, like you said, who am I now? What can I offer to the world? How did all of this come about?
I'm sorry. So me deciding to travel?
Yeah.
Man, I don't know. So deciding to walk away from football was actually a tougher decision than I thought it would be. I mean, all the people in my life, most of the people in my life were really questioning why I was doing it as well. So I had to overcome a lot of like the social conditioning of like saying no to millions of dollars.
Yep.
Deciding to walk away for all these reasons that I knew deep down in my heart were right for me, but nobody else really understood and they couldn't relate, except for the guys that actually go through it. And so walking away, and I was going through a pretty big breakup at the time too. I was engaged, and I ended up, calling that off as well. So I went through a lot of transition all at once, and I was just kind of sitting there with this void within, like physical void within my chest of like, man, like I just blew my whole life up, and like now what? Like who am I without all this stuff that I thought, was a part of who I am? And so I figured, what better way to go find myself than to go travel the country and do this wild experience. I have this freedom now. I don't have the football anymore. I got a little bit of money in the bank, and like, let's do it. I have an opportunity. Like, let's take advantage of the opportunity. I know, there's millions of people that wish they had such a beautiful opportunity. So I was like, I need to take advantage of it. It'd be a shame not to. And so I head off on the road and decided to share via my blog. And, I did all that, just kind of wanted to get more experience about business because I knew like my next thing I want to create some kind of business, some kind of impact. And so I thought it'd be cool to do that, write off some gas mileage on the way and share some stuff. And it actually turned into something where people were really like reaching out to me, inspired by what I did. And I started realizing really quickly, like, whoa, this is bigger than just me. Like a lot of people are really thirsty for this kind of thing. We're stuck in this society that conditions us to be a certain way, to go after certain things, to work until we're 65, to retire, to do what? It's like all these constructs that aren't real. And so breaking through those things and bringing awareness to the stories we tell ourselves about how to navigate this reality, and knowing that there is other ways, and then showing other people that there is alternative ways to live and there's ways to find inner happiness. And it's, I'm so grateful that I was able to play so long in the NFL, make a lot of money, live out a childhood dream, and still feel empty inside. Yep. And realizing that's not what is going to add value. And there's nothing wrong with that, but putting my value in it, my self-worth in it, is just a recipe for disaster, because you're never going to have enough. You're never going to get to the finish line. You're going to continue trying to get more and grow and learn. And so finding peace within, this journey on the road the last couple of years has completely changed my life and changed my perspective. I've learned so much about myself. I've done a lot of processing of the stories that I tell about myself, the self-limiting beliefs, the things that, got me to where I'm at, got me to the success where I'm at, and, maybe the unhealthy ones that got me there too. And bringing awareness to all this stuff and realizing, that I am worthy of anything I want in this life. And the only thing holding me back is myself, and learning now that all the things I've learned, and by sharing my experience with others, I can really inspire them to go out and do the same.
And I think that's one question I wanted to ask, as somebody's watching this and they say, sure, Joe, you have millions of dollars and you can go out and do this. How does somebody that doesn't have that, but can still have the feeling of, hey, my self-worth isn't in my next promotion or the next car that I drive? That's what it's all about. It's not necessarily going out and driving the country, but being able to say, my worth isn't tied up in XYZ. Like, that's really what this is about.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, you got to question, like, why do you want that new car? Like, why do you want that promotion? What is it giving to you? And why there's nothing wrong with those things. Like, I want to create a multi-million-dollar business. I want to show up and do these things. I want to have massive impact, but it's about participating in the game of life and enjoying the process, not needing that to feel complete. And if we find completeness within ourselves and happiness within ourselves, then all that stuff, honestly, what I've found flows to you with a lot greater ease. And you don't have to force yourself to find these things. And so I think really questioning the stories and the beliefs about why we don't have what we want. Like, what is the feeling that new house or that promotion or that car is going to provide? Is it security? Well, then you can start deconstructing that. Like, well, what do I need to feel secure? Oh, then you can realize, oh, maybe I do have enough money that I already feel secure. I'm making enough money. And then it's not as much pressure on creating it, which will allow space for it to flow freely into you. Because, I mean, money provides a lot of opportunity, and I'm super grateful that I have a security blanket that allows me to do all these things and experience stuff. But, it's energy. It's energy. And like, when we can release the blocks that we have to why we need that energy or what we give that energy, we allow it to flow a lot more smoothly and a lot more freely.
I know you're pretty heavy into meditation, yoga. Was that something you were doing in the NFL as well, or just something that you sort of picked up after the league?
Yeah, I started my fourth or fifth year. I started reading a couple of books about, I started getting worried about the CTE and the brain trauma, and I really wanted to be proactive with working my mind out. And I found a couple of books with meditation and these pictures of these brains, these fMRI scans of the brains on meditation and how they're lit up and the neural pathways and neural networks and neurogenesis, and how you can actually like grow your brain, heal your brain by training it. And meditation is one of the most important tools to do that. And so that's why I got started in it originally. And a couple of people had shared, and I learned that it really helps with the anxiety and the stress and the focus and performance, and thought that would really add value to my career as a football player. And it's such a tough practice to commit to and to get something out of at first, especially because you really start realizing how much your mind is racing and how crazy you really are. And it does kind of create more tension and distress before it actually helps start calming the mind. And I think that's why a lot of people have struggle initially with it. But I really committed to it, a daily practice, because I wanted to be proactive about the brain trauma, and really something that really made me a little nervous. And I'm so happy I did, because now it's one of the most important tools that I have in my toolkit. I meditate at least once a day, try to do it twice a day. And now it's like bringing that awareness into everything throughout life has been so powerful. If we have a trigger that comes up within me in my relationship, or if I'm driving on the highway and get cut off, it's like I get this trigger that comes up, and now I can create this separation and awareness, why is that coming up, and then deconstructing the story rather than just attaching to that feeling. And it's just really completely changed the whole way I navigate reality. I mean, everything that comes up within ourselves is our own issues that we're bringing to the world, and a meditation gives you the space and creates the space to really navigate those waters.
Well, if you can help me figure out why I get angry when people cut me off on the way to Chicago every morning, I would really appreciate it.
Why does it come up?
We don't need to do that, because I don't have another 3 hours. But
I know, right? We can do a session later.
Yeah, we can do a session later. I think that's one thing I really enjoy watching your Instagram feed, your story, just because you do talk about a lot of that stuff, especially when you're walking and you're on trails. And so just so people know, you started a blog, Man Van Dog Blog. Who came up with the idea of that? The name, not the idea, but the name Man Van Dog Blog. Was that all you?
Yeah, it was me. I just started flowing. I was ideating, and I was like, Man Van Dog Blog. It just rolls off the tongue.
It's my favorite. It is my absolute favorite name, and I do a lot of social media stuff. And when I had read about you previous to you being on the show with Nick, and he had reminded me when he had you on. So I love the name. So you're touring, you're driving across the country. You were when you first did this. Any special, most favorite place that you saw that you hadn't been to before that just blew your mind?
Man, there was a lot of cool places. Actually, surprisingly, I think a lot of people can connect with this because I went to school in Las Vegas, so I was only a few hours away from the Grand Canyon. Grew up on the West Coast, flew into Vegas a bunch, always flew over the Grand Canyon, saw it from a distance, and I actually didn't decide to go until I was on this road trip. And I was like, you know what? I'm finally going to go over there and check this thing out, see what it's all about. And when I pulled up to the Grand Canyon for the first time driving, it was
Yeah.
like you're driving from like 2 hours. It's like flat, nothing going on. You're just like, there's no like mountains, nothing really like that beautiful. And then all of a sudden you just pull up and there's this huge hole in the ground for as far as you can see. And it's pretty epic place.
Very cool. And I also saw and heard that you're touring baseball stadiums all across the country.
Yeah, I think I went to over 20 different stadiums.
Okay.
I went to over 50 games. It was pretty amazing.
But you're a Cubs fan. Is that accurate?
So you want to hear the story about that? So I grew up not liking baseball that much. I really actually kind of despised it. I was not very good, like I said, when I was a kid, and it really frustrated me. So I never really like got the game because I was like, oh, I just can't hit it. And then my buddy, who's in a pretty competitive fantasy baseball league, invited me to join. It's probably 5 years ago now, 5 or 6 years ago, and I like loved it. I loved like getting into the stats and the matchups and the pitcher and hitting and how it all works. And I started understanding the game for the first time, but I didn't have a team. And everybody in that league, most of the guys in that league are Cubs fans. So I went to Wrigley for the first time when I first started getting into baseball, and it was like opened my eyes to like what baseball is. Yeah. Oh, it's the Mecca. And it completely changed my whole perspective. I was like, this is awesome. I really fell in love with it. So they're one of my teams I really enjoy and really like. I have a few different ones that I've kind of gravitated towards. But yeah, I'm more of a fan of just the matchups and the players and the fantasy part of it.
Yep.
More than the team. But
yeah, you can't go to Wrigley and not enjoy yourself. Were you able to sit in the bleachers at all?
Yeah, I've done it all. I've done bleachers. I've done like right behind home plate. I've done the what are they called in the outfield? The bars they have, the houses that they have.
Yeah, oh, the rooftops.
Rooftop bars, yes. Those are incredible too. Done it all. I've probably been there like 7 or 8 times now.
Very cool. Well, what's next for Joe Hawley? I know you're doing some different speeches and those types of things. I'm sure some of that has slowed down through what's going on in the world, but what's next for you?
Yeah, I'm transitioning from the Man Van Dog blog more into the personal brand. I want to get into more coaching. I'm actually creating a online coaching program specifically for athletes, and going to start with former NFL players. I'm trying to teach them the things I've learned and just creating a safe container for them to feel supported in the transition process. That's one thing I feel like I missed tremendously was the sense of community. Like I said, it was really hard to walk away from the game because not a lot of people understand. It's the normal person is gonna be like, you have a lot of money, you have all this fame, like you're good, you're fine. Like what's there to be like upset about, or what's really hard about that? But it's very difficult. And I think guidance and support and community is really what's missing in this space. So I want to try and create that and support guys because in our society, these are warriors. We're warriors. We're leaders. We're role models. We're people that a lot of people look up to. We have a lot of influence. And so guiding these guys and giving them and helping them find purpose outside of football and giving them the support to really create larger impact is kind of the overarching big dream I have. And I'm working towards that now, and having this space over the last week to really sit down and slow down and really start creating that has been really beautiful, and I can see it coming together, which is nice.
Very cool. I know that you went on a retreat a few weeks ago with other men in a group. Is it Every Man? Is that what I saw? Every Man.
Yeah, I've learned a lot from them. They're in the same mission. They're a lot of the things they're doing I want to apply to my community. That's going to be for more specifically for athletes, but they're bringing this men's work, this men's emotional work to the world, which I think in our society and our culture is something that's really been missing for a long time. Guys.
Forever.
Forever. We're told, it's to be tough, to be a man is to not show emotion, to not cry, to be strong. And it's just so far from the truth. I think real to be a real man, to be really strong, is to show vulnerability, and that's what real leaders do. And finding balance within ourselves, and showing up and being able to hold that space is really one of my gifts, and I really want to bring that to the world. And I'm excited about continuing to do that work and continuing to learn how to bring it to people.
Amen. And I think that that's probably one of the biggest things that could change the world, is just getting men to a point that we can talk about what's going on in our hearts, in our heads. It could change a lot of different things. So I'm with you on that. I actually connected with the Everyman representative in Chicago right after I saw your story that day. I think the meetings are a little bit further north than I can do, but it's definitely something that I thought was interesting. So I appreciate you continuing to post stuff on Instagram. There are people watching it for sure.
Thanks, man. I really appreciate that. It really inspires me to continue to share as much as I can.
Keep doing it. We're all watching. Well, I appreciate you being here, and keep up the good work, and we'll all be watching.
Thanks, brother. Anytime.
All right, Joe. We'll see you soon. Thanks.
See you, man.
Bye-bye. Awesome. That was, for me, watching him on Instagram. It's been one of the biggest things, is that is the way that men are in a great regard, and we need to not be that way. And so I really appreciate the fact that Joe's been sharing those kinds of things on Instagram, and you should follow him. He's on Instagram at joe.hawley. I've got it right there on the screen. Yeah, really, really awesome. So from a programming perspective, we do have a show, our first Saturday show coming up this coming Saturday. And if you are a graduate of Purdue University anytime after 1997, you're going to know this man. He is the piano man, Bruce Barker. When I was there, he first started playing at Jake's Roadhouse, and then obviously was at the Neon Cactus, going on almost 25 years now. So I'm really excited. He did a live broadcast this past Thursday, singing songs at his piano at home, and had, I think, 15,000 viewers, something crazy like that, 250,000 views at this point. He's a legend in the Purdue world, and I'm going to be talking to him on Saturday at 1:00 Central Time. So that's going to be our next show. I'm working on an early April show, and we have a late April show booked. So that is what we got going on right now. Thank you for joining us today. We will see you next time. Alrighty. Bye-bye.